Hi everyone, and welcome back to The Rich Life. If you're new to my channel, my name is Shristi and I make videos on business and lifestyle, and I'm super excited about today's video because I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite topics ever, and that is personal finance. I'm a huge personal finance junkie. I love reading up on this in my spare time, whether it be through books or podcasts. And I also majored in business in college, so I feel like I have a healthy understanding on this. I also was raised by parents who really instilled the value of saving and investing. So I'm lucky to be familiar with this concept and able to plan ahead from a young age to make sure that my financial future is secure. And I want to share as much as I can with you so you can achieve your financial goals as well. I actually linked a financial planning template in the description below. It's linked in my blog, so definitely check that out if you're interested. It's a really simple template that works well for me. I don't like my templates being overly complicated because I get overwhelmed easily. Thought it would be helpful for you guys. It's completely free, so if you want to check that out, I hope it's helpful for you. I'm going to be talking about how I save and budget as a 21-year-old consultant that works in New York City. And actually, I'm at home right now because of the pandemic. I am not in the city, but I am going to share how I would save and budget in both instances, how I save and budget at home and how I save and budget in the city with the same salary across. So hopefully for those of you who are living at home, this can be helpful for you. And for those of you who are not and have to spend money on rent and other living expenses that come with living on your own, this will hopefully be helpful for you as well. So I'm going to get right into it. Just so you know, I am going to be looking down a bit because I have everything on my laptop and I want to make sure I'm getting the numbers right. But before I dive into everything number specific, I really want to establish a framework for why I save the way I do. So I know a lot of people have different goals when it comes to their finances. For me specifically, my ultimate goal is financial freedom, and I feel like this is a concept that is really taking on these days. I think people are starting to realize that retirement is not an age, it's actually a number. So the sooner we hit that threshold, the earlier we can, have the freedom to pursue whatever we want to. For me, this does not mean necessarily quitting my job. I just don't want to be reliant on one source of income. So that is my ultimate goal. I want to be financially free as early as possible. That is why my saving is quite aggressive. I'm also not the type of person to, track every single penny. I think, there's a lot of stress that comes with that, and you do want to enjoy life while you're young as well. You don't want to just live below your means to the point where you're not enjoying yourself. So I think it's important to maintain a healthy balance, and hopefully my expenses and my savings tactic will show this as well. First and foremost, I am going to start with saving because you should always pay yourself first. The first category of savings is retirement, and this is split into two categories. So within retirement, I save and put money towards my company's 401k, and this is a pre-tax contribution. And also, I put money towards a Roth IRA I opened. So I contribute about 4% towards my company's 401k. My company actually does not match right now, but until I hit my first year of employment. In the future, I would up this contribution though, just to make sure I am taking advantage of the match. Aside from my 401k contributions that are taken before money even hits my checking accounts, I automatically transfer money to my Roth IRA account. And a Roth IRA account is essentially a tax advantage savings or investment account, and I highly recommend this for everyone. I can't stress how important it is to open one as soon as possible and start contributing, even if it's just $100 a month. Just put in as much as you can, because a lot of people don't know this, but the money in your Roth IRA can actually be used for non-retirement purposes. Like, for example, you can take about $10,000 out of it and put that towards your down payment of a house. So I highly recommend this, and you can contribute towards a Roth IRA regardless of your income, because I know there is an income limit. You can always take the backdoor Roth IRA approach, so there really is no excuse to not contribute to a Roth IRA account. In total, I contribute about 15% on average to my retirement savings bucket, and I prioritize that first because I know It's so important to invest in your retirement as early as you can because of compound interest. So if you put in the same amount of money but start 10 years later, you will have way less in your account. So start as early as possible, even if it's just $50, $100, put in something towards your retirement accounts. My second bucket is my high interest savings account. And first and foremost, I do think it's important to make sure that you have some sort of emergency fund in place, even if it's as little as $1,000. Just have some sort of fund in place so if anything were to happen, you can take care of yourself. I personally recommend a 6-month emergency fund savings account, but it's really up to you and your circumstances. But I would definitely make sure you have some sort of emergency fund in place in a high interest savings account. I specifically use Marcus by Goldman Sachs because I find that their interest rates are pretty high compared to other competitors out there, and I think it's a very user-friendly app. So I contribute about 5% monthly to my emergency fund. I actually already have 6 months of expenses in place, but I do contribute a little bit more because I am a little bit risk averse. If you have people relying on you, I do think it's a good idea to have a little bit of a larger emergency fund. The next bucket within my high interest savings account is for short-term goals. And right now, my short-term goals consist of things like vacations, luxury purchases I really want. This is a way to make sure that I stay on track. That's about 10% of my income that goes towards my high interest savings account. And I think that's a healthy amount. This is the liquid part of my savings. And for me personally, since I am on my own, I don't have kids, I'm not married, I don't have to worry about having much more than that easily accessible. The next fund I have is my brokerage account. So these are all of my investments. I use 2 accounts. I use Vanguard and Fidelity. I use Vanguard as like my net worth fund. So this goes towards essentially just like building up my financial security. Right now I contribute about 15 to 60% of my income towards my Vanguard fund. So 15% if I were living in the city and not living at home because I have other expenses, but 60% now that I'm living at home with my parents because of the pandemic. And I know I'm in a very fortunate place to be able to do this, but if you do have this opportunity, I think there is absolutely no shame in moving back in with your parents. I think it's actually one of the best ways to save money, even if it is for a few months or a year. That will really add up over time. Aside from that, I invest about 2% of my income into my Fidelity. I call this my Fidelity cushion fund. The reason is because this is like my extra contribution. I am more aggressive in my Fidelity investment portfolio. I sometimes pick stocks individually or go for a little bit more of an aggressive index fund, like a large cap index fund. And the reason why I chose to open this account is because I wanted to have a sort of backup investment account in place if anything were to go wrong. I do have that as a source of income, whether it's for myself or for my family or anyone else in need. So I want to make sure that I have a backup investment account in place. And I know that might sound a little bit too risk averse, but I don't think there's any harm in making sure you plan for a worst case scenario. In total, I save about 43% of my income when I am living on my own. And I save, honestly, I want to say like 90+% of my income when I am living at home. Personally, when I live at home, I usually budget about $100 towards expenses because I don't really have any aside from skincare or anything that I want. I'm really thankful that my parents are, paying for everything right now that I'm at home. I don't pay for food unless I go out to eat or my phone bill or anything like that. So I'm very fortunate to be in this position where I can save almost all of my income now that I'm living at home. I wanted to show you both examples because I think it's very achievable to save 40+% of your income if you budget correctly. And now I'm going to dive into the budgeting portion. When I'm living on my own, I budget 57% of my income towards expenses, and I'm going to show you exactly how I break this down. My first category is living expenses, and I limit my living expenses to 30% of my income, and I highly recommend this if you can, even if you live in an expensive city. I think, it's important to live in a safe area, but try to minimize your rent as much as possible because I think you're essentially throwing money away by renting a place out because it essentially goes towards nothing. You're not really building your net worth with it. I live with roommates, so that is one great way to minimize your living expenses and your rent. You can also try and negotiate as much as you can, especially now during the pandemic. It's the perfect time to negotiate. Maybe try sacrificing living in a really expensive area, like instead of living in the hottest spot in the city, maybe move somewhere a little bit more mid-range would be a better option for you. So you do have to make some sacrifices when it comes to this, but decide what's important for you and try to minimize your rent accordingly. Aside from that, I pay for my phone, utilities, renter's insurance, groceries, transportation, the gym. Those are my main living expenses. I have a separate category for additional food, but if I really want to focus on what I need to live day to day, those are what I include. Yeah, that usually ends up being 30 to 35% of my expenses, actually including food, and sometimes my food bill is higher just because I love making food on my own. It usually tends to be closer to 35%. So I aim for 30%, but it's not unusual for it to be 30 to 35% of my income. So that's my first category. The second category is called food, and this is essentially anything aside from food I make at home. So this includes restaurants, takeout, coffee, drinks when you go out, essentially anything that you eat or drink that's not in your apartment or your home. I budget about 10% of my income towards that because I do think it's important for me to socialize and eat out with friends and colleagues whenever possible. And I personally like going out sometimes and treating myself with a good meal. And I love trying new restaurants and new cuisines, so I do budget 10% of my income towards that. So if this is less than 10%, which happens pretty often, I'll show you what I do with that money at the very end. My third category is personal care because that's very important for me. I think it's really important to invest in yourself and the way you look. I invest about 10% of my income towards personal care, and this includes things like skincare, fitness classes, treatments. Like I love hydrofacials, microneedling, stuff like that. If I'm getting a laser treatment, I use that money towards that as well. These are like more of my regular maintenance treatments. Hair, things like getting your hair done, hair dyed, and if you want a blowout or anything like that, eyebrow threading, I do get that done on a regular basis as well, so I budget about 10% of my income for that. In total, that was about 55% of my income, and I do leave 2% of my income for miscellaneous purchases because you never know what pops up. If I do have any money left over, that either goes towards my miscellaneous fund or my miscellaneous fund is just my checking account, by the way, but either it goes towards that, so that could be things like entertainment, if I want to go out and see a show, random apparel, home purchases, anything like that that just pops up and I want. Usually my personal care expenditure is less than 10%, so whatever money I have in there will funnel over into my miscellaneous bracket. Yeah, this is essentially anything else that means a lot to me. I also transfer money from my checking account, any money that's left over, into my short-term savings accounts as an incentive for myself. So I highly recommend that if you want to just find a way to minimize your expenses and give yourself a good incentive for saving more. So that is exactly how I save and budget as a 21-year-old consultant. I hope this was helpful for you, and definitely check out my template down in this description below if you're interested in exactly how I allocate my spending and savings. I hope this was helpful for you, and please leave your tips on how you specifically budget and save in the comments below. I love hearing about what other people do, and I feel like it's going to be helpful for our community as well. So I would love to hear that, and thank you guys for watching.